This is the age of dying democracies, artificial intelligence, declining intellect, and corrupt powers. The countdown is on. We are now in the 24th hour.
Hey, thanks for coming back. I'm Michael P. America, and guess what? Another episode of the 24th hour. Like I was saying before, we are definitely in the 24th hour, and we need to talk about the fact that democracy is dying, and the institutions that were there to protect it are being dismantled. And where is our CIA? Where is our military? Very, very interesting. Think about 9/11. You guys don't know, but there was a strong suggestion that a military coup was coming right before 9/11. So they wagged the dog to prevent that military coup. But that was actually floating around. A lot of you probably never heard that. So before we get started, I kind of want to show you something quite interesting. And I really believe it's interesting. And it has a little bit to do with COVID. It has actually a lot to do with COVID. It has a lot to do with drugs, but legal pharmaceuticals. We're going to actually talk about illegal drugs, illegal pharmaceuticals, and the wealthy that create the issues. But first, I need you to actually take a look at this.
Hello, America. As the nation's doctor, I hear from folks every day with your health questions. In this video, I'm going to tackle some top questions about marijuana. I'm Surgeon General Jerome Adams, and the doctor is in. Wow, if I had a nickel for every time I got this question. Lots of baby boomers used marijuana, and they seem fine. Why the concern now? Well, the marijuana of today is fundamentally different than in decades past, or even just a few years ago. It's significantly more potent, and it can be further concentrated for use, a combination that can harm the developing brain. This is a really important question. What's the difference between THC and CBD? Well, both are components of cannabis. THC is the component responsible for euphoria and intoxication, getting high, and addiction. Pure CBD or cannabidiol is not intoxicating and has not been shown to lead to addiction. It's important to note that levels of THC found in marijuana have significantly increased over the last few decades. The THC concentration has increased threefold between 1995 and 2014. And as THC increases, so does the risk for addiction. As a parent, here's a question I can appreciate. How should parents and teachers talk to young people about marijuana? Well, we know the best way to address substance use in our children is to prevent it. So be frank with your children about the dangers of marijuana and emphasize how protecting their brains from harm is the best way to ensure a healthy future.
Okay, so I played a little bit of that PSA, and you recognize the Surgeon General there, who was, after he made a plea for young folks to stop vaping marijuana, he literally made the plea, and it was real. It was off script. Shortly after that, he was dismissed. And where I'm going with this is that obviously pharmaceutical companies made a lot of money to, inject you with serum that supposedly prevents COVID. Kind of like the whole flu thing, the whole cold thing, where you keep getting different strains. When COVID hit the coronavirus, they stopped calling it the coronavirus. And the reason is you could track it all the way back to the laboratories and them experimenting with something like 42 to 43 different versions of it. But my belief in how it actually jumped from animals to humans was really simple. The legalization of marijuana, they put it in vapes, they experimented on the youth, they finally got it to cross over. Why do I believe that? We had a mystery virus before the outbreak of COVID that hospitalized some young folks, and they had the same symptoms, and all of a sudden it went away, and bam, we have COVID. So I'm just going to leave that there for you. So I'm going to get to it. So we're going to talk about the wealthy, the military, the CIA, and drugs. So let's go back to 1964. 1964, a young man named Mario Savio, which is not young now, but he was then. He was a Berkeley student who had joined the Civil Rights Freedom Riders in the summer of 1964. So this young man stood on Sproul Hall steps and told a large rally that the university was acting like a factory that considers its students merely raw materials for processing into standardized personnel. So I kind of want you to think about what he was saying there, all right? So here's something really interesting. Our man Savio actually had a remedy. He made this suggestion.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Okay, so I believe his suggestion is absolutely correct. So the one great thing about Savio's suggestion, we just stop. It's called civil disobedience. If they're going to try to take away our democracy, I believe that we should look at the civil rights movement, the Students for Democracy movement, civil disobedience, okay? Nonviolent. But if we stop, and I'm talking about really stopping, like absolute cease in violence and aggression for 30 days. There's no crime, no violence, no nothing. Put a stop to it. I guarantee you'll get your democracy back. No violence, no violent crimes, nothing. Just stop. Everyone just hold on. And we get together and we protest for peace. The other thing is that we could actually put a stop to the machine. So we could figure that out and nobody works. Everybody ceases to work. We come to a complete standstill. That's what we ought to do. We ought to look at that because we need to make a statement. So let's talk about law and order real quick. So you always hear these politicians talk about law and order. They love to talk about law and order. So, or the rule of law, okay? And you definitely hear the Republican politicians, they've been, that's their dog whistle forever. And the Democrats will do the same. We'll talk about, the Clintons in a little bit, and Mr. Biden, who, he did look presidential. The Democrats are really good at looking political and presidential, but looks are absolutely deceiving. And we know that, especially in this day and age where we have to really look, we have to let people know what's going on. All these think tanks are telling them what to say and how to appeal to the public. And what you realize, the Republicans didn't have a real playbook other than chaos, right? We got to disturb the norm. That's what they did. So law and order, rule of law. This is often cited by the politicians. We know that the fascist Republican dog whistle, that is a fascist Republican dog whistle. We know that. So the essence of rule of law is that all people and institutions, all people and institutions, do you understand that? All people and institutions within a political body are subject to the same laws. Now, when we look at Iran-Contra, we look at abscam. Some of you guys are like, what's abscam? Okay. We look at what's going on right now. They don't seem to believe in the rule of law. They just believe in the dog whistle. And the dog whistle means the rule of law is about white supremacy. That's really the conversation that they're stating. But we have this nice generic definition of what rule of law means. So, Savio talked about the machine. Democracy was under attack during Nixon as well. Johnson really opened the door for that once the Kennedy assassination, that democracy was going to be under attack. The assassination of Kennedy really signifies the retribution And so that's another conversation. We'll have that later. So let's continue this. So we move into 1965. The current school administration had a new acting chancellor who finally conceded or backed down, right? So this is what the school did. They established provisional rules for political activity on Berkeley campus, allowed open discussion for members of all political groups at, I believe it's pronounced Sproul or Sproul, could be Sproul, it's probably Sproul Hall, during certain hours of the day, and permitted tables for leafletting. I believe that the current administration's reaction to the schools is really based on the history of what happened at Sproul Hall with Savio and, the Students for Democracy. So that spring, the student organizers started the Vietnam Day Committee. This group helped spark the anti-Vietnam War movement nationwide. Now we're getting into their drugs. Remember, we're talking about the wealthy, the military, the CIA, and drugs. Okay? Right. Okay? Right. Very interesting thing. A little factoid. Coca-Cola produces as much as 3 billion in pure cocaine every year and sells it to one of the world's largest opiate manufacturers in a secretive deal with the U.S. government that has recently been renewed about 2023. This came from Chloe Whelan of news.com.au, so Australian, right? And this was on 2023 in April. She wrote this. The first drug dealers in America and Europe were the wealthiest Americans and their British relatives. And in the 19th century, there was a company called the East India Trading Company. They all had a piece of it, okay? So shipping and smuggling opium and various contraband into the U.S. and Europe via military ships, merchant vessels, and commercial shipping lines, right? Think about that. So here's the other thing. Today, they have more options. So it would appear that all wars are about money, power, and resources. And who controls it? Or who has it? The power. Banks finance wars, nations fight them, and the few profit from wars substantially. All you got to do is look at the profit margins. Wall Street's going crazy, setting new records. People are going broke. Things cost more. Right now, the current administration is firing everybody in government so he can centralize power and get rid of institutions that supported democratic reform. So we're really back to the war of the 60s. Can you imagine that? All right, so the few that profit off of wars and drugs, and we'll say drugs. They have dirty money, right? That's what the feds call it, dirty money. Guess what they do? What do you do with dirt? When you want to get dirt out of something, you wash it, you launder it. So they launder their dirty money through banks and large corporations, and that's what's pushing up a lot of the stock values higher and higher. So when you get these companies that seem to kind of come out of nowhere, or they were stagnant for a real certain period of time, and they go, well, that's the market. It's not the market. Most likely they're laundering their dirty drug money. So yeah, they have control of pharmaceuticals, illegal and legal. Corporations' job is to get paid. They have a duty to the shareholders. That's what it's all about. Okay? They're shareholders. So people were, during COVID, they were working. Everything came to a standstill, but yet Wall Street was starting to bounce back and starting to set records, and the records keep going and going. And how can stocks continue to go up when so many people are losing jobs, unemployed? And yeah, there was government money to make it look like everybody's shopping on Amazon, but there's a lot more companies beside Amazon out there, right? And by the way, 4,000 of these companies invest in the global prison system, corporate global prison system, in your taxpayer dollars. So remember that. Real simple thing. You can't stop drugs and human trafficking. You're not going to be able to stop that, forced labor. And the reason is you're looking in the wrong places. They want you to think that there's these organizations, this organized crime. It's all organized crime. They want money. Money is their God, and money at all costs, including being a detriment to humanity. So it is drugs and human trafficking. So they have to launder the money through the corporations. It's like, you don't know where these injections came from. Not from the root source, at least. You're never going to know that. All right, so here's the deal. Illegal drug money is being laundered through the corporations and the banks. And the banks started it first, and then they had to form the corporations. Probably because they had so much money coming through that would be obvious. So we got to create tentacles, right? Increased demand. Why? Because you're placing burdens, heavy burdens on the people. They need to cope. They need to escape. There's your market. Create the problem, sell the solution. Supply and demand. That's where we're at. All right? Understand this. One more time. Wars are fought to gain access to control the supply of resources that for manufacturing, packaging, and distribution of illegal substances, i.e. drugs. Illegal drugs. Yeah, you know, George down the street went to jail. Why? Because he sold an ounce of something that was illegal. And he ain't getting out for 5 to 7 years. Corporations do it all the time. Or I should say the wealthy do it all the time. So you think about where all this money is coming from, this money to invest. They're not even losing money because they create addicts. They just have a flow of cash pretty much in perpetuity. You got 8 billion people on the planet. Everybody knows someone who has an issue with some type of substance abuse. Think about that. So what else does that say? Well, quite simple. It makes them responsible for pretty much all the world's crimes and the destruction that's going on. I think that's a real easy, you can just reach that very simply. War is all about profit and loss. The wealthy profit and people's lives are lost. Families are broken up, destroyed for generations. And understand that this is not theory. It is absolute fact. The information is out there. Hey, let's talk about General Smedley Butler. General Smedley Butler is one of the military's most decorated officers, okay? He wrote a book called War is a Racket. Very few of you actually heard of that book, but it's sitting at the Library of Congress. Yep, all the information is there. He wrote that book. He was killed in 1940 after helping foil an American Nazi plot to overthrow the U.S. government. Remember George Bush, Harriman, they got that relationship. Let's support the Nazis, but wait a minute, maybe we always have. So I will tell you, if you know the history of opium, is to see the face of your enemy and the weapon that they are attempting to form against humanity, right? Always keep in mind, when you go to third world countries, or what they consider third world countries, or countries of color on different continents, you're going to have the monetary, the military, and then eventually you're going to get the slave trade. All right? Their motto: if they can't convert you, they'll co-opt you. If they can't do either, then they'll conquer and kill you, or kill and conquer you, whichever one you think comes first. Okay? So this is what I really believe. Real corruption is the abuse of power that manipulates the world population while committing every abominable crime against humanity for the sake of absolute enslavement and destruction of mankind. And here's the kicker: they do this all in the attempt to laugh in the face of God Almighty. They know what they're doing. There's some implications there. Figure it out. Sleight of hand, as a good friend of mine likes to say. The spectacle leads to distraction. So part of chaos is creating a spectacle. It's like you're on TV. It's easy to create spectacles. And at some point, people get so good at creating spectacles, they themselves are the spectacle when they walk in the room. Why do you think we got president on TV every single day? Think about that one. Spectacle leads to distraction, all right? Distraction is the lie that keeps us all in the dark. So, they hate woke, so wake up, number 37. You guys, I know there's some guys out there that know what I'm talking about. Wake up, number 37. They are the world's elite power brokers that hide behind political systems, corporations, and the world's armies, right? They prosecute and imprison the world's population for crimes they premeditated, forcing men and women to carry burdens, live under laws and conditions they themselves would never endure. There's also a certain passage in a certain book that talks about that. And they said scribes and Pharisees. Well, these guys have their own religion. So think about that. The bottom line is the insanity of their ambition or ambitions is absolute destruction of humanity. And guess what? We all subsidize it with our tax dollars. Oh, yeah. Stupid thing. You go to jail, it was your tax dollars that paid for you to go to jail. That's kind of crazy. Think about that one. So while they get drunk off of their sadistic deeds, you keep forming more and more weapons against you. And one of them is to turn you against yourself, which is, to me, the most insane thing. And that shows that if you can easily do that, or if you've gotten to that point and it becomes autonomous, we're really in, this nation and this world's really in peril. So let's look at India. We talked about the trading company, right? East India. So India in the 1850s, listen to this. The British Empire stocked soccer ball-sized opium from the ground up in several 6-story warehouses, approximately 1 to 2 blocks long. 6-story warehouses, several of them, approximately 1 to 2 blocks long. Business was good. So this is in the late 19th century, or moving into the late 19th, from the mid to the late 19th century, right? Each building was operated by 2 overseers and about 450 underage boys. I believe the forerunners of Epstein and the Republican Party, no doubt. And all of the other satanic rituals, ritualistic abuse and stuff that's going on. Think about that. 2 overseers and 450 underage boys. They couldn't do that in Europe, but they could go to another country, continent, and mess those guys up. How did their military make that happen, right? And who okayed it? This was known as the British East India Company, owned by the British and American elite opium smugglers and traders. And here's the other thing. It just gets better and better. These elites also founded as universities in the late 19th century: Yale, Harvard, Princeton, and Columbia universities. And I have to say, they were colleges before, because some people don't know the difference between a university and a college. They'll be like, no, they were a college before, blah, 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 blah. 17th century. Yeah, but in the 19th century, they were actually formed as universities. Some of them had different names and different locations. So let's look at Yale. Yale was organized as a university in 1887 by Timothy Dwight V, right? He was an educator, congressional minister, became president of Yale University 1886 to 1898, And during his time as president, he organized Yale as a university. And guess what? Guess what? He comes from a wealthy banker family. We go with banks, wars, drugs. Princeton officially became a university in 1896 and was subsequently renamed Princeton University. Guess what? Our man Woodrow Wilson, 1890, Wilson was appointed to the chair of jurisprudence and political economy. Then he became the president of Princeton in 1902. And so Wilson has a strong Presbyterian background, a Scottish background. My guess is possible Scottish rites. So these guys out here trying to figure out if he's a Mason, Illuminati or whatever. More like Scottish rites, which puts him somewhere in the realm of Mason, right? And he had an allegiance with the Confederate that was put down. So he was a Confederate. And he's one of the few presidents, there's like two of them actually, I shouldn't say few. There's a couple that were part of the Confederacy that rose to the most powerful position in the United States. He was actually hired by President Francis Landy, right, who had a strong Presbyterian and Scottish roots, probably associated with Scottish rites. And their family money was derived from being seafarers. You're going, what's a seafarer? We don't say that anymore. Shipping, right? So my guess was he was shipping the opium for the bankers and other contraband. Wow. Gotta love how these Presbyterians or / Christian / drug dealers, how does that work? You wonder why atheists are like, we ain't going for it. So here's a great note about Wilson and tariffs. And we have to bring this up because one of the big things to understand is that there are comparisons out there to Wilson. Even I made the comparison to Wilson and Trump. I realized that Wilson was, even though he was racist, he was all get up, was a much better president than what we have. But the guy right now is not trying to be a great president. He's got other ambitions. So Wilson was against tariffs. He argued that the system of tariffs, or high tariffs, cuts us off from our proper part in commerce of the world, violates the just principles of taxation, and makes the government a facile instrument in the hands of private interests. So in other words, Wilson, who may not have totally understood how far this was supposed to go, didn't like tariffs, or maybe it was a necessary tool for them to take that position at the time. Private interest controls your government, according to Wilson, with tariffs. Trump's doing quite the opposite. Trump, being a product of the age of narcissism and diminished expectations, wants tariffs. Trump wants tariffs. Little tea break. Columbia University. In 1896, campus was moved and renamed Columbia University. Seth Low was the president. From 1890 to 1901, his family wealth was opium, Indian trade, and other pharmaceuticals. I hope you see the connections. Shipping, pharmaceuticals, and banking, and the wealthy families. So why am I bringing up these schools? Well, they're not the only schools, or universities, first of all. But when we're going to move forward and talk about MK Ultra and the CIA, MK Ultra sponsored programs with many of these universities. These universities were founded by the elite, mainly the elite from America and Great Britain. Okay? They were moving all kinds of drugs before before countries even thought about that drugs should be illegal. So that's kind of the issue that China has. That's a big issue that China has with drugs. A lot of other countries, because their history was that the West and the European nations actually dropped a bunch of drugs and got their people addicted. China, like around 1960s, 1970s, had something like 27 million addicts. So when you go to China with drugs, they're like, oh, we got a special place for you. They don't tolerate it. That's probably why the Taliban, even though you've been told that they push drugs, they don't tolerate it either, because they know what it does. And the people become totally useless if they become addicts. Americans don't share that because they use it to beef up their justice system numbers, their prosecution numbers, and they feel like they got enough people that they can run through the grind. And again, it's about chaos, confusion, blah, 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 right? All right, so these universities that I just spoke of, they were funded by the elite to gain access to resources and establish their indoctrination programs for their agenda. Remember this? New World Order? New World Order is total chaos and fascism, or fascism through chaos, and that's breaking down democratic systems or democratic resources, stripping them, and diverting all your tax money to make the wealthy even more wealthy. Well, thanks a lot, MAGA guys. You just did exactly the opposite of what you said. How smart are you? Not very. I think the White House has a sign that says grifters are us on it. Yeah, you can dig that, right? Come on now, he's just asking for $230 million because he committed crimes and the Justice Department of Justice went to prosecute the guy with 34 felons, telling you that whatever he does isn't a crime. That's like an elephant that takes a crap and says, there's no crap there, just keep stepping in it. It'll get better. So let's talk about the late 1800s or late 19th century. We have the Bear Company, right? Starts in 1863, in Barmen, Germany. Yep, as in bear aspirin, right? They started processing heroin derived from opium, and then they marketed it to adults and children, labeling it as a non-addictive cure. Oh my, lions and tigers and drugs. Oh my. And these Germans and drugs, I tell you, I could have been rich if I could have set up my Betty Ford clinic back then. Got stock in Betty Ford? Wow. Because listen to this. Aspirin came a year later. So I think one tactic is, and they've probably been doing this a lot and we never recognized it, is that they're doping up stuff in order to get you hooked on the brand, and then they have to remove the dope before they get in trouble, and then they come out with another product. That's what I think they've been doing, and I think they still do it. So you're hooked on the brand now, right? So that, I think that tells you that there is a degree of addiction that is psychological. However, do enough and the body starts jonesing for it. So a year later, they put out aspirin, and I don't know what was in that, because obviously I wasn't around then, right? Man, I still have some of my former students when I used to do the Frederick Douglass thing. They thought I was Frederick Douglass. I know I played the role pretty good, but trust me, I'm nowhere near that old. So in the late 19th century, guess what? Eugenics gains ground. So we're going to jump to eugenics because all this is related, right? Eugenics gains ground, and they believe that it started growing in Great Britain first, and it spread through Europe, including Germany, hitting Australia, the US, Mexico, and Canada, and a few other places. And guess who funded eugenics? Same old American wealthy families, American and British families. And some of these families over time changed their names, but the bloodlines are still the same. So thank God that we have a good record system that they're probably going to annihilate, so you're totally in the dark. So that's why I'm doing this. So the main benefactors were, and the benefactors, for those who don't understand the word benefactor, are the people that are actually where the money's coming from. Carnegie, Rockefeller, Morgans, Harriman, that's the old Bush family partner, right? Remember Harriman, Bush, overthrow democracy, install fascism, Nazi system in America. Then they bankrupt the world economy in 2007. Then we get Barack Obama because, like, we need a savior, and to rebrand, you put a brother in the White House, little sleight of hand while they rebrand again. And then after Obama, democracy worldwide is roadkill, right? Because Donald Trump and the fascist vultures, and not just the people here, but those who are really behind it, are finishing us all off. And I'm just bringing you up to date. So, eugenics in Germany turns into, you guessed it, the Nazi movement, which takes us into World War II, right? So we're going to talk about the drugs in the Civil War and World War I and World War II. So I'm not trying to get too far ahead. So just kind of bear with me, right? So think about this. The companies that supported the Nazis during that time are still operational. And here are some of the companies. Ford, General Motors, IBM, Audi, Porsche, Shell. Some of them are going to be obvious. Okay, Porsche, Audi, right? Okay. Associated Press, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, Deutsche Bank, Chase National Bank, and there's that bear company, Lufthansa, ExxonMobil, BMW, BASF, and Alliance. And there's more. So let's get back to the drugs. During the Civil War, it was known as the soldier's disease, and that was addiction. This was during the Civil War. 5 to 10 million opium pills were given out to soldiers and medical staff, which resulted in massive addiction numbers by war's end. So, opium addiction, you don't know your history because you think history is boring. And they want you to think history is boring so you don't understand how you're being attacked. So they can just twist you any old wicked way they want. American soldiers during World War I used several drugs for various purposes, including stimulation. We know morphine, right? Heroin derivative, right? Widely used for pain management among soldiers. It was administered via injections. Oh, we're creating addicts. And was crucial for treating battlefield injuries. Cocaine. Oh, there we go. My man sang about cocaine. They were singing about cocaine back then. Talking about Civil War, right? Got my tea. Yeah. Boston Tea Party, remember that? We need another one. All right, cocaine, occasionally used as a stimulant for its analgesic properties. It was sometimes included in medical kits for treating fatigue and pain. Now, the British military during World War I dispensed cocaine pills under the brand name of Forced March. Forced March. And that was for pain and performance enhancing. During World War II, the Nazis made a cocktail out of cocaine, methamphetamine, and oxycodone to enhance performance of their soldiers. They really want to take you back to the day of the berserkers, and Hegseth is definitely one of those guys, man. I know, World War II is not the berserkers, they came before that, but they were calling the German soldiers, they were trying to call them that as well. Now, while American soldiers during World War II used several drugs to enhance performance and manage pain, I shouldn't say while, American soldiers did, right, during World War II. Use several drugs to enhance performance and manage pain, enhance performance, and cope with the stress of combat, enhance performance, and to cope with the stress of combat. Calgon bath, take me away, please. Commonly used drugs, benzodrine, which is an amphetamine, used to combat fatigue and increase alertness. A lot of pilots right now for the U.S. military flying around on something. That's a fact. Yep, help soldiers stay awake during long missions. You don't think they're not doing it now? Of course they are. After World War II, the wealthy class created the CIA, replacing the OSS. The CIA takes control of intelligence agencies in the United States. I think there was 15. The wealthy said, we want all the intelligence. The CIA and MI6, Great Britain, UK, whatever you want to call it, began the MK Ultra program, creating a new use for drugs being shipped into the United States by the real power, the oligarchs of the United States and Europe. And if you don't understand oligarchs, let's say the wealthy that have serious means to control political power. Serious means. Let's just cut to it. So here's another thing you guys don't know. Why does South America and Central America seem to have so much of a drug economy? Well, you can thank the boys at the CIA. This is what they did. They took about 50,000 Nazis. Yes, they had 50,000 Nazis and relocated most of them to South America. They turned South America into a narco continent, and that's my word. Yes, I know narco state, governing body, blah, 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 but a narco continent. Organizing, listen to me, they organized, cultivated, and produced illegal drugs and the system which fuels wars and the prison industrial complex, banking, and Wall Street profits, etc., etc., etc. MK Ultra program was designed to control and modify behavior of those targeted through means of chemical, radiation, which they use microwaves. So if you remember Cuba and the U.S. and Cuba, the U.S. diplomats were being microwaved, and then they blamed Russia and the FSB. That was already part of MK Ultra. So if Russia and the FSB got their hands on it, it's because the spies came in and they figured it out. Some American spy, probably a Republican MAGA, sold out to the Russians and gave them the information on microwaves. Yes, that is MK Ultra. Hello. So what kind of chemicals did they use with MK Ultra, or drugs? LSD, which we call acid, from the mushrooms, right? DMT, also known as fantasy or businessman trips, got a couple of other names. And MDMA, also known as ecstasy, and we know that fentanyl is a heroin derivative, which is derived from opium. Can you say 20-year war Afghanistan? There you go, right? Crazy stuff. There are so many declassified reports, news articles, and books that completely, and I do mean completely, supports this information. It can be found everywhere, including in government archives, and has already been released, much of it. So, the FBI was running The FBI was running COINTELPRO alongside MK Ultra. So think about that. You have these two programs. One is coming from the CIA, MK Ultra. The other is coming from the FBI, COINTELPRO. If that's not war against U.S. citizens, I have no idea what war is. With these programs, the wealthy use the government to target civil rights organizations, Black Panther parties, Students for Democratic Society, students protesting on various college campuses during the 1960s and 70s, people in music and film, various politicians, foreign heads of state, foreign government officials, etc. Okay? The CIA infiltrated various industries and organizations, including colleges, news media, music, and film. Now, I hope you're sitting in your seat when you hear this number. During that time, I'm sure the number's a lot more now, it said that the CIA had influenced the production of 50,000 films using their agents and assets. 50,000. Okay, you don't know 1,000, 50K. Yeah. They controlled almost all of the music, with some of the famous artists actually working for the CIA and many others becoming assets willingly or unwillingly. They'd have, Timothy Leary would have the parties, him and his guys. They would, if you didn't want to be a part of it, they'd spike the punch. That's where you hear this saying, don't drink the punch at the party, right? It's probably spiked. Or don't drink the Kool-Aid, as we say now. You've been drinking the Kool-Aid. MK Ultra. For those who are unwilling, I got a spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go down. What, you thought that was a kid song? No, that's them laughing at us. Yeah, that's what that is. They had agents and assets everywhere, co-opting culture through means of sex, drugs, media, and violence. Remember that? AKA sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You thought these rockers were being original? That was MK Ultra. That's some dude at CIA said, hey, we're going to push sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And why? Because they can use sex as a drug too. And then top it off with real drugs. So the MK Ultra program ran for decades. Still running, actually. Decades. Okay? That's a lot of messed up culture. It's all a lie. I'm looking right at you. Everything you know is a lie, right? They have complete control of all mainstream media, and you can add social media to their list. Facebook admitted in 2000s that they work with the CIA. It's still going on. Who do you think's flooding the internet with all this garbage? Most people are trying to figure out how to get paid. They want you to think that most of the public is rotten versus keeping your eye on the real rotten folks, which is a smaller number. So they want to keep you divided. And they want you to beg for government intervention because they really want to censor you. So that's the joke. In 1961, Dwight Eisenhower warned us against the military-industrial complex. I'm sure some of you history guys know all about that, right? Right? Eisenhower, let's hear what he has to say.
A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense.
All right, so I think you get the gist of it. So he's warning us about the military-industrial complex. He's telling you that this is something that's never been seen before in the United States. This military-industrial complex, and you guys can look it up. What is the military-industrial complex? All right, so here is something else you need to think about, right? So we had assassinations in the 60s. Gandhi was in the late 50s. But you have MLK, JFK, Malcolm X, and RFK. And this had a lot to do with their anti-war stance during Vietnam. Yes, they were against it. These four highly influential figures were against the Vietnam War. So I'm assuming they assassinated them because tripping them on LSD wasn't going to work. And apparently those four got the memo, do not drink the Kool-Aid or the punch. That's what I'm assuming, right? It was rumored that Kennedy did get hit twice, and they made sure that didn't happen. And that's probably led to him firing Dulles and a bunch of other people, which made the wealthy families really ticked off, because then they kill them after that. And it was obvious the CIA was involved. You don't, trust me, you don't need to be an academic or a scholar to figure it out. You see how quiet they are, even, about things that are happening right now. So, General Smedley says, war is always about the racket. It's the racket of power, drugs, military, the military-industrial complex, and the bankers or bankster families, right? I think Garrison made a point about the JFK assassination. He did this on live TV. He appeared on Johnny Carson's show, and it would have been great if they would have actually shown Jim Garrison being interviewed by Carson, because I think you would have thought about some other things. But guess what? Lucky for you, I have a copy of it, and here we go.
Was to make sure that there were no conflicts contained within them. The agents were ordered to resolve the conflicts, prepare new reports, and to destroy the old ones. Another example.
What does all of that mean?
It means whatever you choose to have it mean. Again, if you ask me...
But it's somebody saying something. Did that actually happen, or... you said that Mark Lane said that a man told him, but did it actually happen?
If you fly down to New Orleans, I can show you these people talking, but you just invited one person up here. I'm telling you what they said. Each time I tell you, you say, is that a fact? All I can say is that it appears to me to be a fact. If you want to reject it, you can.
Right.
But let me show you some pictures, and if you want to reject these, go ahead. In the 26 volumes...
You're not on trial, Jim. I'm just asking.
Yeah, but I'm afraid another advertisement may be coming up.
You're right about that, too.
In the 26 volumes, there is no reference to any serious sort of arrest. There are a couple of references to short dialogues, and then the indication is that the man wasn't of any value or any importance at all. Actually, at Dealey Plaza, there were 10 men arrested, and this has been kept secret for more than 4 years. Here are the pictures of 5 of them being arrested, and they've never been shown before.
Well, I don't know
Several of these men arrested have been connected by our office with a Central Intelligence Agency of the United States government. The probability is that this is why Officer Tippit was killed. Is this speculation? Positively, and I want to identify it as that. But the probability appears to be that the killing of Tippit was the diversion which allowed them to turn loose these 10 men. Here's some more. And here's another one.
It won't show, Jim.
But why aren't they mentioned? Why aren't they mentioned? They're not mentioned
but you
at all.
say speculation and the probability.
No, just a
I don't
minute.
understand. Who's suppressing all of this information? On whose order?
I'll tell you who's suppressing it. The federal government is suppressing it.
Who in the federal government?
The administration of your government is suppressing it because they know that the Central Intelligence Agency...
On whose order?
On the order of the President of the United States. Who do you think issued... Let me finish now.
I didn't say a thing.
Before the advertisement. The executive order, which forbids every person in this audience and every person listening to this program, which forbids them to look at this evidence until September in the year 2039, was issued by the President of the United States. Does that answer your question? He's suppressing it.
For what possible reason?
Why don't you ask him, John?
I know what he'd say. I think he would say because, first of all, Mr. Garrison has come up with no credible evidence to support any of his theories.
Well, let me reply to that I am not allowed as an attorney to come up with evidence until the case comes. Why don't they just let me fall on my face?
Are you willing to say tonight, when your trial comes up, that you'll secure a conviction without the shadow of a doubt?
I cannot make a statement which would reflect on Mr. Shaw. Since the day we charged him and arrested him, I have not made a statement which inferred that he's guilty, and I cannot infer that now. But I am trying to tell you that there is no question as a result of our investigation that an element of the Central Intelligence Agency of our country killed John Kennedy, and that the present administration is concealing the facts. There is no question about it at all.
That is your opinion?
No, it is not. I know it, and if you will just wait, you will see that history will support this as fact.
Buddy. Escaping from the worries of cooking for your family is easy when there is a holiday inn nearby.
Okay, so I actually played I played a great deal of that. There's more to it, but as you can see, Carson was very antagonistic towards Garrison. I didn't really see the respect. It seems like Carson's job was to make a joke of Garrison. So after watching that, I believe that, for me, Carson was a CIA agent. And I hate to say it, love Carson, but I don't think he's the only one. I think there are several stars today, older ones obviously, that were a part of that. So let's say post-Vietnam, the wealthy class continue their assault on the American people using MK Ultra, and we know what it's for, right? So they're spreading it all: cocaine, opium, heroin, LSD, amphetamines, porn, infiltrating various different organizations and factions, and all to control and influence, right? And so really targeting the entire population. COINTELPRO, the FBI is running it. So you have these two programs from both of these agencies that are supposed to protect us that get our tax dollars. Ends up being the opposite. They're there to put you in jail using your tax dollars. All right, so fast forward to Iran-Contra, and we got Freeway Rick Ross or Ricky Ross. And I'm not talking about Rick Ross the rapper, of course not. I'm talking about the real Rick Ross, right? Okay, so that conversation's already been had. Iran-Contra, 81 through 86. This is the government and the CIA, wealthy families, selling drugs in the U.S. to buy weapons. And this is what fueled the crack and meth epidemic. Thank you, Reagan and Bush. Man, there's that Bush family again. How they love the American people and how the Republicans love their dog whistles. Because you'd make Pavlov really proud right now, responding to the dog whistles, the bells, and all of that stuff, right? Okay. Yep. Again, using your tax dollars to create more addicts by supplying more gangs with crack already processed for sale. Yeah. So all that stuff on TV, the movies, they got a lab and the naked women and they got powder all over them and they don't trust them and this is how they process it. Very, very small amount. Most of it was all ready to go. Because I was trying to figure out, it's like, I knew this, somebody in a lab developed it. And most poor people aren't sitting in labs trying to figure out how to develop it. And so it's the same thing. There are no poor people transporting drugs, overseas through the military, through shipping lines, flying it, whatever. Come on. They can't even, a lot of them don't have money to get down the block. They have food aid, for crying out loud. But they're just automatically bad. Who is dumping the stuff in their neighborhoods? Who's processing it? I mean, you got to have half a brain. Come on. They needed mules for the product, and they need the mules for the marketing demographic. So I guess that's what the military really means, boots on the ground, right? They totally destroyed families all across the United States during the Reagan-Bush love affair with Iraq and the Crescent Triangle. And then there's hip hop and rap music beginning as a commodity for the music industry. Can you say MK Ultra? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit slightly about how rap kind of gets on TV. MTV airs Michael Jackson challenges because they won't play his music. And, Michael had #1 selling album or albums. And Michael said, hey, it's discrimination, right? MTV was like, all right, uncle. And guess what? Michael gets on MTV. Remember? Beat It. Right. Run DMC. Aerosmith. Walk This Way. And there's Prince. Many others, right? And guess what? Now it opens the door for rap and hip hop to be played on their television. Boy, did they make a lot of money off the black folks doing rap. And then, of course, there was Vanilla Ice. Yeah. Named Periwinkle or Van Winkle or whatever. And, I think that was a whole setup. But here it is. So they used MK Ultra and COINTELPRO to take over the rap industry while they recruited some of your most famous rappers to be agents or assets. So some of these guys who called Will Smith, a traitor and whatever, sell out. This is what I have to say. Beware of rappers with phony credentials. This is nothing new for the music industry. So before you get down on some of those brothers and their handlers, just say Crosby, Stills and Nash, Frank Zappa, Mamas and the Papas. And as Mr. Rogers said, I bet you can. Right? If you thought black folks created gangster rap, you are so wrong. We can thank Tipper Gore and Barbara Bush. Oh yeah, what do they know about gangster rap? You're like, this dude is on something, right? Well, let's reference the infamous email about the secret meeting that changed rap music and destroyed a generation. Rap and the prison industrial complex. Look it up. Okay? Tipper Gore and Barbara Bush spearheaded a move to pull rap music off the shelves, mainly because of its anti-police and anti-establishment messaging in the name of censorship. And don't forget the Willie Lynch letter that was written in the 70s by supposedly they came up with a guy who was going to school. I don't know if he became a professor, but he wrote it. And then in the 90s with the internet explosion, everyone had access to it. COINTELPRO? Possible. That letter may be legit. They don't think it's legit. But I think it's legit, or it's a composite of many letters. Okay? That's just me. All right, so what was the problem? Why did they have to go to such extreme measures again? Because people were waking up from their slumber. They hate woke. They don't want you awake. They want you eating TV dinners with your fat feet up on your reclining chairs, watching a monster truck show with your remote control. That's no longer your children, but the remote control invented by a black man who you hate because they tell you to, right? So guess what we get during that period? We get Clinton, Gore 1 and 2. We get Hillary Clinton's super predator dog whistle. She quotes Professor John J. DiLulio Jr., which leads Biden, who was a former segregationist, to sponsor the 3 Strikes Act crime bill. I'm not sure if that's the exact name, but 3 Strikes law was in that. And a lot of innocent black children went to jail. Okay? So think about that, right? So again, we're back to Iraq, War 1 and 2, right next to the Golden Crescent, that contains Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Remember that Vietnam was the Golden Triangle with Burma, Laos, and Thailand. And guess what it was all about as usual? Yes, opium and oil. Oh my goodness. And here they are again, the same characters from Let's Turn America into Fascism. George Bush starts Desert Storm again in Iran with a former CIA asset, Saddam Hussein, in 1991, right? He's now the villain. And right after the CIA and their other asset, Osama bin Laden, kicks the Russians out of their 10-year war with Afghanistan in 89, right? So CIA assets become enemies. Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. They know too much. They know too much. Or maybe they woke up. They became woke. Right? Right. You know, this administration feels like it's okay to kill Democrats or people that oppose them. Just, you know, don't kill a Nazi like the one that just got assassinated. And you know they wagged the dog on that, and it didn't work. It might have, you know, awakened a few sleeper cells here and there. But the Charlie Kirk murder didn't work out the way that they wanted it to. The false flag attempt on Trump didn't work out the way either, but that they wanted it to. Oh yeah, I believe all of this is spectacle. You know, and it's like, I'm not a Charlie Kirk fan, but I don't think the brother needed to die. He might have, you know, I heard he was on the verge of waking up actually. So think about that. So here's another factoid. By 91, before 9/11, the Taliban takes over and they get opium to drop about 90%. Telling you the Taliban hates drugs, but that's not how they're being sold. And why? Because they have that history. They know. So let's summarize it. U.S. retaliation against Al-Qaeda in Sudan and Afghanistan. These incidents are often referred to as the actual start of the U.S. war with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic jihadist groups. This retaliation was called Operation Infinite Reach. Oh, Infinite Reach. And guess who's involved? The Democrats. Mr. Clinton. Yeah, he's got to prove that he can be a hawk as well. We know that. I mean, dude had sex with a woman and Republicans made a big deal. When their guys are having, you know, trying to get sex in airplane stalls and looking for children, they don't want to talk about it. But you have sex with a woman, wow, that's a problem for these guys. Man, these guys, really? What did they say? I think that was protest too much. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of them in the closet, and they have to scapegoat, you know, people that are gay for all kinds of things because they got those tendencies. Yeah, I believe that. All right, so this takes us into Bush Part 2, Desert Storm, right? And we have the 9/11 tax. And out of that, we get a 20-year war in Afghanistan, and the opium epidemic explodes. Bam! 911, wag the dog attacks for opium and oil. Here we go again. Same MO. The military-industrial complex and drugs. And I'm talking about illegal drugs. You know, we had a major opium epidemic, and it was quite obvious that the CIA, via the military, was shipping opium from Afghanistan and selling it on our streets again. So, as a result, we're still damaged from the spread of opium today that occurred during the 20-year Afghanistan war. Remember that? Operation Enduring Freedom. It was more like Operation Bondage, right? Because now you have a new monkey on your back. It's called addiction. You got new things that you have to deal with. The more pressure, the more people try to escape, the more you can sell fantasy, the more you can sell drugs. Now we got a fentanyl program, and it sounds like MK Ultra because they can just touch you with this stuff absorbed through the skin, right? It's kind of like spiking the punch. Now they can just spike the epidermis, right? Skin, got it? So it looks like drugs are still coming from inside the military, and one of my favorite journalists, Seth Harp, put it out there. So let's talk about Seth Harp's best-selling book, The Fort Bragg Cartel. Fort Bragg Cartel exposes the degree to which America's drug trade and violent crime are connected to its foreign war, right? So Seth Harp's The Fort Bragg Cartel, Drug Trafficking and Murder in Special Forces is an expose of criminality and violence carried out by returning Special Forces personnel in American communities. Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, that's two of them, but they got some issues going on, right? Here's a 10-point summary of Seth Harp's book, The Fort Bragg Cartel. Yeah, I'm just going to keep saying it until you go buy it because this kind of gives you a look into what's going on. So, Let's look at it. 10-point summary. Number one, poppy production plummeted post U.S. withdrawal. So after the U.S. left Afghanistan in 2021, the Taliban reduced poppy cultivation by 99%. 99%, right? Think about that. Taliban has an anti-drug history. The media doesn't tell you that, but they do. The Taliban had already eradicated heroin production once before in 2001, just months before the U.S. invasion. They have an anti-narcotic stance. It's part of their ideology. Okay, so that was before 9/11. So wag the dog and send them to Afghanistan. Don't go after Saudis. Go to Afghanistan and get those poppy seeds again, because we need more addicts. We need to control the world. And if they're jonesing, we got them. U.S. alliance with drug traffickers. When the U.S. invaded Afghanistan, it allied with the Northern Alliance, many who were known drug lords, including individuals with CIA ties. Number four, massive heroin boom under U.S. occupation. By the mid-2000s, Afghanistan and U.S.-backed leadership was producing 1,000 metric tons of pure heroin annually, double the global demand in unprecedented scale in drug history. Number five, official Afghan government involvement. The U.S.-backed Afghan leaders like Hamid Karzai and the family member Rashid Dostum and others were directly involved in trafficking or taxing heroin, meaning I'm going to tax it. If other folks are involved, we want money from them too. Corruption was present at every level in this Afghan government. Number six, false narrative of the Taliban, narco terrorists. The U.S. media and government have claimed the Taliban funded insurgencies through drug sales. They produced no evidence that supports this. Even the U.S. government reports, and you can look at the CIGAR 2018, contradicts their narrative. They contradict themselves. How you like me now? Number seven, economic argument for opium was U.S. driven. U.S. institutions even defended opium cultivation as an economic necessity for Afghan farmers, criticizing the Taliban's poppy bans despite their effectiveness, right? So U.S. institutions were saying, hey, you guys need it for an economy. And the Taliban was like, we don't want that. And so that's why we're still hearing about the issue today. These wealthy families need their illegal drugs because they need you hooked, because they want to control you and they want to send you to jail with your tax dollars. And then they want you to come out and buy other products from them all over again. They get you before you get in, they get you while you're going in, they get you while you're in, and they get you when you come out. That's why it's like hell for people to get out if they didn't commit a crimes that they were falsely accused. The system is meant to keep you in there, innocent or guilty. That's what it's designed to do. Corporate prisons. They got to make that bottom line, right? Global impact of Afghan heroin. Afghanistan's heroin-fueled drug crisis globally. So the United States and the Western powers just doped up everybody, especially in Iran, Russia, Europe, and China. So you wonder why China has issues with the United States? You wonder why Russia and some of the Eastern Bloc countries have issue with the United States? It's the stuff we're doing. Not saying that they're not doing stuff, but we're definitely giving them cause. Okay? The DEA lied and says, well, Afghan heroin didn't reach America. If you believe this, I have a bridge to sell you. Okay? Hypocrisy of drug policy. The U.S. maintains strict domestic drug laws, yet turned a blind eye, or worse, enabled the world's largest heroin operation during this occupation of Afghanistan. And number 10, as Letterman likes to say, Seth Harp's central thesis: the U.S. military and the intelligence agencies were deeply complicit, enabling Afghanistan's heroin boom, making the Afghan client state effectively the world's largest drug cartel. And this is a topic that has been fully explored in his book, and many other books. Get the book. Get Seth Harp's book, The Fort Bragg Cartel. All right. So let's talk about this. We're getting ready to wrap it up. Many talk about shutting the system down. Others say burn it up. So January 6th, it looks like they wanted to burn it up, but they only got to shut it down. Now, the grifter in chief is trying to burn it all up. And he wants to give everything to his wealthy friends because he knows they can be bought. So those in our nation still fighting the Civil War, and I call them the insurrectionary anarchists who attacked the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, they had no real plan other than to be belligerent as a spectacle. That's known as propaganda by deed. Propaganda by deed holds that violent action is the best way to draw attention to a political cause. Spectacle. Right? The good book talks about spectacle. So for you non-readers, read it. They were led by a self-coup tyrant who subscribes to the divine right of kings and the hidden cabal behind the scenes who has always controlled the world. Welcome to the new world order.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
All right, so we didn't need to see Clinton, but welcome to the New World Order. I'm Michael P. America. I'm so glad you can hang out with me today. And stay tuned, we have a lot more. Remember, we just covered the wealthy, the military, the CIA, and drugs. I hope you learned something and we can move forward. We have to save democracy. We're in the 24th hour. And the death of democracy, of American democracy, is at the door. Take care.
The 24th hour.